Hey everyone, hope you all are well. The first thing I'm doing, as always, is priming the eye area, and to do that, I'm using the Urban Decay Eyeshadow Primer Potion. I've just added a few swipes of this across the eye area, and now I'm blending that into the skin, anywhere that I'll be adding shadow. And using a primer will just help the shadows to go on nice and smoothly. It makes sure they blend nice and easily, and it makes sure that they last all day long as well. So if you've been a follower of my channel for a little while, you'll know that when it comes to liner, I always map out my shape. So I like to keep a felt tip liner pen that's on the way out, because then the outline isn't very apparent. So if you make a mistake, you can just sketch over it and perfect the shape. So I like to leave that here as a guideline, and then I'll come back and fill it in later. So I'm going to move on now to the Wet n Wild Rose in the Air eyeshadow palette, and I'm going to start out with a light mauve shade, and I'm using a fluffy blending brush just to apply this shadow into the crease. I think this is just an old Blank Canvas Cosmetics E26 brush, but the great thing too about having that liner outline there is I can now use that as a guide for blending my eyeshadows as well. So I start at the edge of the tail and I just blend back and forward across the crease, making sure not to blend out past that point. So I'm just adding a nice light layer of this shadow in the crease, just getting down a wash of colour there, and then I'm going to dip my brush back into the palette, this time picking up some colour more so on the side of the brush, and I'm going to start patting and pressing this down across the eyelid. And it doesn't need to be perfect at that lash line, because we're going to be filling in that shape with liner later on anyway, so technically you're only covering half the lid. So I'll just blend this then into the crease again, just to make sure that everything is nice and soft and faded. So I'm switching now to a Smashbox shadow liner brush. Any sort of small bullet shaped brush will do, or a pencil brush, and I'm just going to lightly run this down along the lower lash line, bringing it right from the outer corner to the inner corner, and then I'm just fading the shadow downwards to really smoke it out. On that same Blank Canvas Cosmetics brush, I am picking up some of the vibrant pink eyeshadow, the one right beneath the mauve that we just used, and I'm starting by lightly patting and pressing this down on the outer edge of the eye. So I'm blending it from the lid up to the crease, and then I'll gradually start to wriggle my brush towards the centre of the lid just to fade out this shade. So once I'm happy with the placement, I'm then going to go back to my back and forward sweeping motions and circular motions just to buff and blend this shadow out. I want this shade focused on the outer edge, but naturally want it to fade into the shadow that we applied previously. So once I'm happy with how that looks, I'm just going to take up a second helping of this shadow just to intensify it, and I'm literally repeating the same steps as before, patting this down on the outer edge of the eye and then lightly buffing and blending it across. Moving back to that Smashbox brush again, I'm picking up a little more of this shadow and I'm blending this down along the lower lash line, fading it all the way across, and then I'm feathering it downwards. So next I'm taking a pigment from Inglot. This is number 22. I've tipped some of it onto the lid of the pot, and then I've added a few drops of Inglot's Jawline. It's a great mixing medium. It's got so many uses, but today I've used it to turn that pigment into a liner. So I'm using just a small thin liner brush. I think this is from Royal & Langnickel, and I'm just going to begin to fill in that outline, and I'm starting with a small brush just because I can be a bit more precise with my application. But once I've filled it all the way in, I then like to switch to an angled brush, and I'm picking up just a little bit more of that pigment now, and I'm packing it on just to really intensify the colour. And just take your time with this step. You don't want to ruin all of the work that you've done up until this point, so really just take your time with it. Start with a small amount of product and build up as you see fit. What I love about this pigment as well is that it has a golden purple shift to it. So when the light is shining, it nearly makes the liner look like we've gone for an ombre effect. So you can see it's gold towards the inner half, and as we reach the tail, the purple's more apparent. I just think it's a really cool effect. But I've done as much as I can now with the small liner brush and the angled brush, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take the brush that I used to carve out the under portion of my brows. It still has a bit of excess concealer on it, so I'm using that just to tidy up that wing, make it nice and sharp. So I'm just running the brush alongside it, pulling it out towards the tail of the brow. I want to add a little bit more sparkle to that wing, so I'm taking one of the Urban Decay Heavy Metal Glitter liners, and I'm just randomly dabbing it along the wing. Like I said, I don't want this to be too apparent. This is a nice purple shimmery liner too. I just want little flecks of this running throughout the look. For the waterline then, I'm taking one of the Urban Decay 24/7 Glide On Eye pencils. This is in the shade Raw Energy, and I'm lining inside the eye with this. It's got a really nice metallic finish to it as well, so I do think it ties the look together nicely. So lastly, I'm taking that light shimmery shadow on the top row, and I'm using a small pencil brush from Sigma just to add this around the tear duct of the eye to add a little bit of brightness there. And then I've added some of the Eyelure Smoky Lashes, and I'm using then the L'Oreal Telescopic Lift Mascara to coat the top and bottom lashes, and then that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I hope you found it helpful and easy to follow. If you did, please do let me know. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day, whatever you decide to do, and I'll catch you all really soon.